The Bip, the Bip 3 Pro. That's a very odd name. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Dave from Chase the Summit, and today we're going to take a look at another GPS multi-sport watch, the Bip 3 Pro. But this one is pretty different because mainly on this channel I feature much more expensive watches like this Garmin Forerunner 955 or the Garmin Fenix 7, the Epix Gen 2. Those watches cost upwards of $1,000. This watch is just $69. If you've been around my channel at all for the past few weeks, you may have seen a video I posted about the bigger brother to this watch called the Amazfit T-Rex 2. That watch costs about $229, so it's more expensive, but it's got a lot for that price point. And after making that video, I saw that Amazfit announced the Bip 3 and the Bip 3 Pro, which really piqued my interest at this lower price point because I saw how much they delivered with the T-Rex 2. I was really interested in the Bip 3 Pro to see what they crammed into such a cheap device. So I promptly ordered a Bip 3 Pro off of Amazon with $69 of my hard-earned money because I had to know, are these things any good, or are they just more Amazon trash that we see all over the place? Long story short, I've been wearing the Bip 3 Pro for about 3 weeks now, testing it, sleeping with it, living my everyday life with it, working with it, changing my kids' diapers with it, and of course training with it for an upcoming ultramarathon I have actually this weekend. Before we dive in, a couple of things. First, if you find this video fun or helpful or entertaining or anything, make sure you give me a big old thumbs up and subscribe to my channel down below because that really helps me out. Also, if you're interested in picking up a Bip 3 Pro or a Bip 3, there's two of them by the way, check out the links down below because they do help support my channel, and I also have some other watches linked that are in the same kind of ballpark of feature sets as well. In this video, we'll run through the specs of the Bip 3 Pro so you know what you're getting, but I also want to highlight some of the good, the not so good, and the downright ugly about the Bip 3 Pro, while also sharing tons of wellness and activity data from the past 3 weeks. So buckle up and let's do this. So like I said at the beginning of this video, there are two models of the Bip 3. There's the Bip 3 and the Bip 3 Pro that I have here. What's the difference? Mainly one thing. The Bip 3 Pro has built-in GPS, where the Bip 3 does not. So if you want to record your runs or rides or whatever and have a GPS track to go with your activity, you need to get the Bip 3 Pro, or you could do the Bip 3 while carrying your phone along with you to use the internal GPS of your phone with the Bip 3. Hope that makes sense. And what I find interesting about this is the price point. The Bip 3 without GPS is $59, and the Bip 3 Pro with GPS is $10 more. It's $69. To be honest, I don't know why they have two models of this watch. They're both extremely cheap. I feel like they could have saved some money by just making one model, the Bip 3 Pro with the built-in GPS, and no one would complain about that price point because it's only $69. But if you are someone who does not use GPS at all, or maybe occasionally you go for a jog or something, you could save $10 and go for the Bip 3. But for everyone else, I feel like you just spend that $10 and get the Bip 3 Pro because it's got it built in. Why not? When it comes to size and weight, the Bip 3 and the 3 Pro are actually the same size. You can see here they're about 44 millimeters tall. It's a rectangular shape, and they're about 36 millimeters wide and about 9.5 millimeters thick. So it's a really thin device. And if you compare the Bip 3 Pro to something like the Apple Watch I have here, this is the Apple Watch Series 7, you can see they're actually pretty similar in terms of size, like the overall footprint. This is the larger 45 millimeter Apple Watch, but if I flip them on their side, you can see the Bip 3 is actually quite a bit thinner. And of course, in terms of design, you can see that Amazfit clearly took some design inspiration from the Apple Watch. I feel like they didn't really hide that at all, but yeah, it is what it is. The Amazfit Bip 3 is also very light. This watch comes in at just 33 grams without the strap. With the strap, it's closer to like 45 grams, but generally speaking, that's a very lightweight watch, and when I wear it, I can barely tell this thing's on my wrist. It's really comfortable, it's very low profile, and it just kind of gets out of the way. And the design of the watch is not offensive or anything. It's pretty low profile and minimalistic. I don't mind the design overall, and I think most people would just assume you have an Apple Watch on your wrist because of the way it looks. In flipping the watch over, you can see the built-in optical heart rate sensor in the middle here that does have an SpO2 sensor, and we'll talk about the accuracy of this later on in this video. And also the band on this watch is removable. These are an industry standard 20 millimeter quick release band that you can pop off with your fingernail right there and replace those with a variety of different straps you can find on Amazon or directly from Amazfit. In terms of build quality, we're looking at an entirely plastic build, which should not be a surprise because this watch is $59 or $69. It doesn't feel like cheap or like it's gonna break though. It feels pretty well constructed, and I haven't scratched mine in the few weeks I've been wearing it, but it is plastic. It will scratch if you like grind it across a piece of granite or something like that. The Amazfit Bip 3 and Bip 3 Pro are of course water resistant to 50 meters or 5 atmospheres, so these are fine to take in the pool or open water swimming, or even showering with them should not be an issue. The included charger in the box is a standard USB Type A to a proprietary charger on the end here. This is a magnetic charger that just pops on like this. It's easy to charge, and the good thing about this is actually the same charger as they use on the Amazfit T-Rex 2, the T-Rex Pro, and a variety of other watches that Amazfit sells. So you can actually find this on Amazon for a few bucks, even as a 2-pack or something. So if you lose this thing, it's not the end of the world. When it comes to the display on the Amazfit Bip 3 Pro and Bip 3, it is a 1.69-inch LCD color display. It's got 240 by 280 resolution at 218 pixels per inch. Now keep in mind, this is an LCD TFT display. It is not an OLED display. So while it does look very vibrant and bright on this camera right now, when you're actually out in direct sunlight, it can be a little bit of a challenge to read. And I found when I was running with this watch, at certain situations, I couldn't see what was going on the face of the watch at all. In direct sunlight, when it's very bright out, it's kind of hard to see this display. That said, in just about every other situation, like in 85 to 89%, that's a very specific number, of the time, I didn't have an issue reading this watch. I just thought I'd mention it. This display on the Bip 3 is not an always-on display. As you can see, I continue to keep pressing this button so you can see it being lit up. But if I stop pressing that button, you can see that the display will actually turn off. Now, you can wake the display up 2 ways. You can push the button here, and it'll come back to life, or we can use the gesture, which when I raise my wrist, the backlight or the LCD should turn back on. Now this gesture to wake up the display isn't perfect. It's very delayed. As you can see, when the display turns off and I raise my wrist, there's like a full 1 second delay before the backlight or the LCD actually turns back on. That delay is pretty minor, but can get a little bit frustrating when you're trying to see like a text message at a glance. So just keep that in mind. It's not a huge deal because you can still wake up the display by using the button on the side of the watch, but I found the gesture to be a little bit laggy at times. When it comes to the user interface on the Amazfit Bip 3 and Bip 3 Pro, it's very similar to the Amazfit T-Rex 2 that I reviewed a couple of weeks ago. It's basically the same software, it's just missing a few features. So first up, we do have a fully customizable watch face. As you can see here, if I hold and tap on the screen, you can see that I can customize which watch face I want to choose, and I can actually edit the information on the watch face. If I want to see my heart rate or how many miles I ran for the week, I can display that on the watch face, which is kind of cool. Within the smartphone app for the Amazfit Bip 3 Pro and Bip 3, there are additional watch faces you can actually download and install, and there's a ton to choose from there. And we'll talk more about the smartphone app a little later in this video. So from the home screen, I can swipe through various widgets within the Bip 3 if I swipe left or right. So if I swipe right, you can see my activity for the day. That shows my steps, my standing time, and active minutes. If I swipe over again, you can see my SpO2 reading or heart rate reading. If I swipe over again, you can see my stress level, and swiping over again will be my Pi score. I'm still confused on what Pi scores actually are, but I think it's a proprietary measurement from Amazfit within their watches to let you know how active you've been for the day. Swiping over one more time displays the weather widget, and it's actually a really nice weather widget. It's got my current temperature, the status, whether it be sunny or partly cloudy or raining or whatever. You've got your high and low for the day, and I can actually click on this and dive even deeper into the weather widget where I can see the UV index, the air quality, the humidity, and upcoming forecast, which is really nice. Swiping over one more time, we get music controls that will actually control the music on your phone from your watch. This is a really handy feature if you've got your phone buried in your backpack and you want to just control the music in your earbuds. You can skip forward or back a track and even control the volume right from your watch. Keep in mind the music controls on the Amazfit Bip 3 Pro are not music storage, so you're not going to be able to download music to the watch and play them back through earbuds. You still have to have your phone on you to actually play the music. This is merely a remote control for your phone. And from the watch face, if we swipe up from the bottom like this, you can see your phone's notifications. All of your notifications will be shown phone here. For instance, here you can see my Strava notifications, but if you had an Instagram message or a Facebook message or a text message or anything like that, they would pop up here in your phone's notifications. And of course, swiping down from the top of the display will drop into your quick settings, which allows you to control your do not disturb, the brightness of the display, alarms, and if you click the little cog icon, you'll drop into the settings of the watch where you can control various aspects of the watch. In terms of smartwatch features, the Amazfit Bip 3 will also allow you to accept or decline phone calls that are coming in on your phone, but there's no microphone or speaker built in, so you can't like talk to people through the watch. You can just accept or decline the phone call. And from the watch face, if we click the button on the side of the watch, we actually dive into our like app drawer, or where all the apps are. In here is things like your heart rate tracking, your sleep tracking, allows you to start a workout or see your workout history. And there's a couple of really unique features in here, like if I click this more button at the bottom, you can see that there's the weather widget, the music controls, but if I scroll down, there's actually a Find My Phone button, which if I click that, you can hear my phone pinging in the background to find it if I dropped it in the couch or something like that. And this is actually a really cool feature. If I click on camera remote, I can actually remotely trigger a picture from my phone. So if I set up my phone on a tripod or something, I could actually take a picture from my watch if I was trying to get a group photo or something. Now, aside from workout and activity tracking, the Amazfit Bip 3 and Bip 3 Pro will also track your wellness tracking. Things like your step count, your active calories for the day, and of course, sleep tracking. And sleep tracking is actually broken down into sleep stages like REM sleep, deep sleep, light sleep, and all of this is gained from the sensors within the watch. And when it comes to tracking a workout or an activity, there are a ton of profiles to choose from. You can see here we've got outdoor running, treadmill running, outdoor cycling, indoor cycling, walking, etc. But if I scroll down, you can see that there's kind of an endless cycle. If I go into the more sports button here, I think there's about 62 or 63 profiles to choose from, and there's kind of something for everybody here unless you're into something really niche. However, I should mention there is no triathlon or multi-sport activities within the Bip 3 Pro, but again, $69, I wouldn't expect that. If I do drop into one of these activities, you can see that they are fully customizable. So I can go in, swipe down to data display, and I can click on any of these data fields. You can see there are 4 to choose from to change out what information is displayed. So I can cycle through pace, speed, heart rate, stride frequency, steps, and so on. There's a bunch to choose from in here. It doesn't have all the metrics like you'd find on like a really advanced Garmin or something like that, but most of the information is in here. From within the activity profile, you can also choose what graphs you want to display. So if you want to see a pace graph or a heart rate graph, you can enable or disable that. In terms of training tools within activities, there are a few basic alerts you can set up. So if I click on activity alerts here, you can see that there's heart rate alerts, so if my heart rate goes too high or too low, the watch will buzz and let me know. And if I scroll down, there's also a pace or distance alert. Oh, and here might be a good time to let you know that the Amazfit Bip 3 does get frequent firmware updates. As you can see here, mine just decided to update itself, so now I have to wait 5 minutes before I can continue recording this video. Awesome. Okay, now that the watch is updated, I can talk more about the training tools within the Amazfit Bip 3. The really interesting thing about this watch is that even though it's $69, within the Amazfit Zepp app on your smartphone, you do have access to training load and estimated VO2 max, which are actually pretty advanced training tools, all on a $69 watch. However, one thing I will say about the estimated VO2 max is that it seems very low. Mine's reported at 46, while my Garmin, my Coros, Suunto, all of them report me at like 56, 57 as a VO2 max. So I've never been lab tested. All I can say, it doesn't really line up with my other devices. Within the Amazfit Zepp app is also where you can access things like your step count, your distance, your calories burned for the day, and you can also access your sleep and sleep score and all of your sleep details, which is pretty well laid out within the app. Scrolling down, you also have additional information for your heart rate with your max and min heart rate zones, as well as the stress level for the day. The Amazfit Zepp app is also where you can access historical run data. So here's one of my activities from a week ago. And if I swipe up here, you get even more information about your run, like your total distance, your workout time, your average pace, your average heart rate. And if you scroll down, you get a pace chart, a heart rate chart, and you even get a heart rate zone graph down at the bottom here. Another interesting feature is this little gradient distribution that'll actually let you know what percentage of your run was uphill, flat, or downhill. And at the bottom here is also a cadence chart. There's a lot of useful information here, and this is something you typically don't get with a watch at this price point. I should also mention that the Zepp app on your smartphone can actually pair and sync up with Strava. And with all that said, this might be a good point to talk about GPS modes and accuracy. So the Bip 3 Pro, like I said at the beginning of this video, does have built-in GPS, while the Bip 3 does not. So if you buy a Bip 3, you need to run with your phone on you in order to use your phone's GPS antenna for your run data, where the Bip 3 Pro, you can go for a run without your phone and still get run data and a GPS track. The Bip 3 Pro is advertised as 4 satellite position system support, so you get GPS, GLONASS, QZSS, and Beidou, and the accuracy is okay. So to test out the GPS accuracy on the Bip 3 Pro, I've taken out on a bunch of runs, including trail runs, road runs, and everything in between, and I've compared it to a bunch of other devices, including this Garmin Forerunner 955, which does have multi-band GPS, which is kind of regarded as the most accurate gold standard kind of GPS on the market, and I found it to be extremely accurate, so it's a good baseline of comparison. And what I've noticed about the Bip 3 Pro is that it's not terrible, but what they do with the Bip 3 Pro is the tracks are kind of smoothed and they tend to drift quite a bit. And what I mean by drift is you'll notice that on the tracks, you'll notice the Garmin 955 is like right on the road on the map, whereas the Bip 3 Pro tends to drift away from the road and or to the left or right or above, north or south. It's just not right on the money most of the time. I also noticed that the accuracy after 3 miles is about 1/10 of a mile off compared to my other watches. So if I'm at like a 5K or 3.1 mile mark, I'll notice the Bip 3 would be at like the 3 mile mark. It's a little bit behind and it doesn't record as much distance as my other devices. And when I scroll around the tracks, you will see some anomalies where the Bip 3 Pro does drift away from the road for a period of time, or there's like a little jut out into a field or through a house or something. Generally speaking, the GPS accuracy on the Bip 3 Pro is not perfect. I'd probably give it a 5 out of 10 in terms of accuracy. That's not to say this watch is totally garbage. I just want to let you know that the GPS is just not perfectly accurate. Stay tuned to the end of this video where I talk about my final thoughts on the Bip 3 Pro. Now with GPS accuracy out of the way, let's move into battery life because that's a standout feature on the Bip 3 Pro. So it's a little bit confusing. If you take this watch out of the box in default settings, you can get up to 14 days of standby time or smartwatch mode without being on a GPS activity, which is a lot of time. 14 days is actually pretty good for a watch of these capabilities. However, if you decide to change any of the settings by increasing the brightness of the display or changing the timeout of the display from the default 5 seconds to something like 15 seconds, it will greatly reduce the battery life on the Bip 3 Pro. Now, when it comes to GPS battery life, it's really confusing because they don't actually advertise how much battery life you get with the Bip 3 in GPS mode. So I had to do my own testing and I went out on several runs for hours at a time and I observed about a 3 to 4% drop in battery life for every hour. What that calculates out to is about 23, 24, 25 hours maximum of battery life in a GPS activity, and that all greatly depends on, again, your backlight brightness or LCD brightness and how often the display is turning on if you're raising your wrist every 2 seconds and illuminating the display. This is just my unscientific testing. That's the best I can give you. And once the battery is depleted and dead and you have to charge it back up, I recorded about 2 hours to get from 0% back to 100%. With battery life out of the way, let's talk about heart rate sensor accuracy. And this, again, unfortunately, isn't the strong point for the Bip 3 Pro. I've taken the Bip 3 Pro again on several runs, and during those runs, I wore multiple heart rate sensors, including my Garmin Forerunner 955 and the Garmin HRM Pro chest strap, which is an ECG sensor that is worn on the chest and is super accurate. Because the HRM Pro is so accurate, I tend to use this as a baseline of comparison when looking at other watches, and unfortunately the Bip 3 Pro didn't perfectly line up here. I noticed in a lot of situations where the heart rate would spike and drop back down and come back up again, something like intervals, the Bip 3 Pro could miss some of those dips or spikes entirely and kind of smooth them out. So I was finding accuracy not to be perfect. If I had to give the heart rate sensor a rating, I'd probably give it like a 6 out of 10. That might be a little bit generous. It's not perfect. It's not absolutely terrible. Like, it wasn't totally off. It was generally picking up the trend lines pretty accurately. It was just missing some of the nuanced details when I decided to walk for a little bit or when I went off on an absolute sprint. So now that we've run through the features and what this thing does and some of the data and accuracy, let's talk about what the Bip 3 doesn't do compared to some of the other watches on the market right now. First off, the Bip 3 does not have an altimeter or compass on board. So there is no elevation readings. It's not collecting elevation data. If you're going on a hike or something like that, it doesn't do that at all. The next thing it doesn't have is external sensor support. You cannot pair an external heart rate sensor to the Bip 3 Pro. You can't pair a cycling power sensor, nothing like that. No sensor support at all. Another feature the Bip 3 is missing entirely is any form of navigation tools, being a compass or breadcrumb mapping or GPX file, course following. None of that stuff is featured on the Bip 3. Okay, final thoughts on the Bip 3 Pro. Should you get this thing? Is it worth $69? Well, kind of. It's a little bit complicated. Of course, there are some issues with the Bip 3 Pro when it comes to GPS and heart rate data. They're just not very accurate. I mean, the trend lines are there. You can get the idea of your effort level and where you were on your GPS track, but they're not perfect. But at the end of the day, we have to keep in mind, this is a $69 watch, okay? It's $69. That's like cheaper than most pairs of shoes you could buy right now for a GPS multi-sport watch you can walk around with every day. So let me put this two ways. If you are a hardcore athlete, you're somebody who runs every day, you're somebody who goes out and does triathlons or ultramarathons, or you're a competitive marathon racer or somebody who runs on a track and you run often or cycle often or you do your activity just about every day, don't buy this thing. It's clearly a budget offering and it's not for you. However, if you're somebody who's entirely new to running, you're just getting into the sport, maybe you just got a bike and you want to track your cycling activities, you're somebody who just needs basic GPS and heart rate data without going overboard on the accuracy or spending too much money, this isn't a bad option. Yes, this is hard for me to recommend for people because it's not super accurate, it's got some issues, but at the end of the day, it does have a ton of features and it does have built-in GPS for under $100, and that's kind of impossible to find in the competition. If you look at like the Fitbit Charge 5, you're spending like $150 for that thing, and in my experience, that thing had terrible GPS accuracy and terrible heart rate data, and this thing kind of beats it in most of those areas. So at the end of the day, you just need to know what you're getting into. Obviously, this thing is cheap for a reason. They wouldn't be selling this if it was competing with a Forerunner 955 at $69. So just know what you're getting and it might be okay for you. I also think this might be a really cool gift to somebody if somebody's birthday's coming up and you didn't want to spend a ton of money, but you wanted to give them a GPS watch. This might be the way to go. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the Amazfit Bip 3 Pro. I hope they're useful, and now I want to hear from you. In the comments down below, let me know what you think of the Bip 3 and Bip 3 Pro. Are they worth getting? Did you get one? Are you gonna get one? Let me know in the comments down below why you bought one, why you didn't get one. I'd love to hear from you. And finally, if you did find this video helpful or fun or entertaining or anything, please consider giving me a thumbs up and subscribing down below because that really helps me out. And of course, if you're interested in buying a Bip 3 or a 955 or any watch I showed off in this video, check out the links in the description down below because they do help support my channel and they cost nothing extra to you. So use them. That'd be great. That's all I've got for this one. This was my quick review of the Amazfit Bip 3 Pro and what I think about it so far. It's kind of interesting for the price. Man, it's all about the price on this one. Okay, I gotta go now. I hope you enjoyed this video and I will see you next time. Bye.